here we are on this side. And the first thing I think we're going to do to get some small victories is I'm going to go ahead and take that shock out. So you remember, got the other shocks here. You got the large ring, and then of course the bushing with the beveled side down. And then that's got your top step that'll go up inside. So what I'm going to do right now is, if you remember, that's a 13 mil up top, 13 mil on the bottom. I'm going to hold on to the shock body and take the impact to get this top off. And then on the bottom, it's just 2 nuts to get those studs out. Alright guys, so that one's on. I had to go and get a lock washer nut because I misplaced this one, but got it all taken care of. So as you see, I just torque these down. I used the gun to run them down, and then I torqued them by hand, and then I just used the gun to run this one down until it went snug, and then I gave it a 1/4 of a turn. So you see it got good compression on the bushing. But you also saw I actually had to use my vice grips and grab that top on the old one, just because the plastic shock face here, or shock cover, stem cover, of course it twisted off. But when you're putting it on, you can just hold on to the shaft and tighten it down, because this is metal and it's actually welded onto this top. But that's on. Now our next thing we might as well go ahead and do is throw this strut or sway bar on. It was an 18 on top, and an 18 wrench on the back is going to hold it. And then on the lower one, it's smaller. It's a 15 on the front, and then that 18 on the back is going to hold it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use my 1/2 inch impact on this top one, make light work of it. As you see, because I've got this spindle and stuff in the way, I'm not going to be able to get right into it. So I'm just going to have to throw a wrench on that one. But shouldn't be too big of a deal, but we'll see. Alright guys, so that one's in. Now, I believe our next step is we're going to get all these cotter keys off. Here, and then of course the one up underneath. And then we'll be able to pop this tie rod off and take this whole assembly, once we get this shock unhooked, over there and put together the new one. Alright guys, cotter keys are out. Now let's go ahead and get this tie rod off. 19 millimeter, so that I've already broke it free, didn't take much. So get that off and use this ball joint knocker or tie rod knocker and get it broke free, get that thing over there and get it assembled. Alright guys, so this is now off the vehicle. This shock, the shimmy shock, was a 15 millimeter. You see me get it off there. So I got the new bar laid out, the connecting track bar, and then I've got the tie rods on each end. So what I'm going to do is, like I said before, I'm going to take this caliper and see if I can get it lined up here. So I measured straight against that sleeve to the last thread. And on mine, I'm at 0.656. So that's what I'm going to take and run this first one down into. Now you can get a 7/8 wrench, which will go around the body. And then I'm going to take some of my 401 film and coat these threads on there so I can run it down the end. Now, I'm going to do this for both sides, and then I'm going to take an overall measurement of both ends. So, I'm going to do the caliper first, and then I'll see how close I got overall. Through this on the vehicle so I could do a little bit more explaining to you. You see me go out of frame for a bit. That's because this one over here actually had a bad start on the thread, so I had to take a screwdriver and spread apart, get past that bad thread, tighten it back, and then keep threading. Now also to note, on this side the threads are in reverse, so make sure, because going counterclockwise takes it in, going clockwise takes it out. But that's opposite on this other side. So on this one, you can see I got my shock in there, which it's obviously we got to turn it to get it in the right position. And none of these are tight right now. All this is still just in place. Again, this one clockwise cranks it in, counterclockwise brings it out. So I measured 57 3/4 on the old one and 57 3/4 on this one. So getting it back together, I'll do some string measurements to make sure the alignment's good. But like I said, it drove fine before then. So now we're going to go ahead, and these guys here tighten down to 55 foot-pounds. These guys right here are 20 foot-pounds. The steering dampener, 55 foot-pounds. And then that other tie rod, of course, is going to be 55 foot-pounds. So I'm not going to video this because you're just going to see me bouncing around doing some torques. But then we'll get back to this next step, which is going to be taking this caliper off. Alright guys, so onto these brake calipers. One thing to tell on one of these WJs is they could have two types of calipers. You have an Akebono or a Teves. Easy way to tell is your Teves has this retainer spring, the Akebono won't. And I want to show you, your Teves has a brake pad that looks like this, that has the hangers out on the side, where your Akebono just has your basically wings on it to hold in between the bracket. So it goes under it, this one goes over it. First thing you want to do while it's still attached there is pull this bracket off. Now on the back side, there is these holders, these dust boots that have these plugs in them. I've already taken those out. And then that's going to be a 7mm Allen. And the other thing I'm going to do is, which I probably won't have to because these are so wore out, but on yours, you probably want to go in here and you can push that piston back a little bit. Especially if you're going to replace the rotors too. You can pry against it, but my pads are so wore out, this caliper is just going to fall off. An 18mm is going to take these caliper bracket bolts off. And once those caliper bracket bolts are off, then you can take that rotor off. So now the next thing we're doing is we're on our way to replace this top ball joint and this bottom ball joint. And of course, the ABS sensor. So our next sequence of events is we're going to take this hub out again with the axle attached. So what that means is we're going to get, I think it was the 13mm 12 point to get these 3 star bolts out, the 12 point head bolts. And that should allow this axle to be pulled out without having to take the hub away from it. So let's give it a shot. All right, guys, so the axle slid right out as I figured it would. So now our next thing we're gonna have to do is we're gonna get these cotter pins out there, a cotter pin out there, and I was actually able to find where it finally came in, a 28mm socket. So after I get that cotter pin out, we're gonna see if that thing works. All right, guys, with those off, now it's the moment of truth. The 28mm socket I ordered, like a glove. So what I'll do now is, if you remember correctly, that was that 28 that I fought so hard with on the last one. And then this guy up here, if I get up there to it. All right, guys, I didn't realize that the video had stopped, it quit filming. But basically what I did is I took that 28 and got this one off, and then the 22, took that one off, and then I had to go ahead and take this off just so I could remove that spindle, which is laying right there. So as before, I just ended up taking the tie rod ball joint knocker, and of course it just fell right down. So now the next thing is, obviously we need to pull this top ball joint first, so that way we can line up straight to get this bottom ball joint. So I've already got this rigged up. You see the little one on the bottom, the cup to accept the ball joint, and then this is just your centering pad. So this takes a 22mm wrench to get up top there, and it just so happens I have 21, 23, and 24, but I don't have a 22. So back to the old crescent wrench. You see on this here, I've got this one set up on this side now. Because the stem's still on this one, I ain't gonna cut it off. I'm gonna try to do this the other way. But I got this cup, which is gonna accept the ball joint down, and the stem's actually running up through here in the middle, and I'm making sure it just stays centered. But all this looks like it's got a pretty good press, and then we can just use this cap and push straight down. So the next thing we'll do is I get a little heat on this, get it heated up, and then on this one I can actually get a 22 socket on there and the breaker bar, so that'll be nice. All right, guys, so you've seen, took a lot of heat, but it finally gave. I'll show you in a minute when I can really touch that thing, but you can kind of see the big indentation in it. These bottom ball joints was a huge bitch. They were seized in there good. But right now that thing's about 600 degrees. So we're gonna let this side cool down. Got the new ball joint going in, so I got this cup here that fits above it, lets the shaft go down in it, fits around it, and goes above and hits this flange. And then back here, I've just got a cup big enough to accept the ball joint without hitting, and it's sealed here in the center. So now again, unfortunately, I've got to use the big crescent, crank it down, but this really shouldn't take too much effort because it cleaned it up really nice. Alright guys, so that bottom one's in, just had to do a little slight adjustment. This one here, got the cup, it fits down over it nicely. And then I got the receiving cup on the bottom that's gonna let it basically come down through and not hit anything. So we're just gonna crank this one again, crank it down until it sits flush. May have to readjust maybe once. Alright guys, after fighting that thing for way too long, it's finally in. For some reason the press kept wanting to go sideways on me, but a few taps of the hammer were back lined up. Now I'm gonna grab this guy, wipe out these holes a little bit so I can get it back on there. I can clean it with an on there. Be a lot easier for me. He goes just like so. Throw this bottom one on, now hold it up there for me. Now we get our bracket that we don't forget. And she'll go right here. Well, we'll crank that bottom one up to give me a little bit more thread up top. That bottom one is a 32 mil. Crank it guy up there a little bit. All right, put this guy back the right way, like so. Remember that top one is a 22. All right, with those on, we're gonna crank this top one again to 75 foot-pounds and this larger one to 80. Alright guys, so you see me put the hub and the axle back in, tighten those three down, 75 foot-pounds, and that was that 13 millimeter star, or a 12 point I mean, sorry. Now that's in, the next thing I did was I went ahead and got the new ABS sensor. So, turn this thing around. You'll see it goes right there, 10 mil bolt, and it done exactly the same as the other. So, it, get that pushed in there, it snakes around, goes through a clip, back around to a clip right here, then goes, follows all this back around to that same plug up underneath like the other one. So it's right there where my hand is. So now that all that's on, our next step is, I got my rotor. I'll probably just wipe some 401 right there, throw the rotor on, put a lug to hold it, put the caliper bracket on, and probably we'll go ahead and do the same procedure as you've seen on the other side, where we'll break the bleeder loose, push the pistons back in, and set those brakes in and tighten all that down. So then the last thing we'll have to do is that one center drive, that center link. Together on this side, got everything tightened down, got the cotter keys in, so this side's officially done, as you've seen in the time lapse. Now we got this guy still unhooked. As you know, he goes right up there. So to finish up this last part and get this front end job complete, we need to take it loose from the Pitman arm. So I've already got the cotter key out of that when I removed all the cotter keys on the front. So next thing we're going to do is take a 19 mil wrench, get up there, bust that thing free, and then of course we'll have to get those and try the tie rod knocker first to see if we can get it brought down out of there. I came over here and threw it on. All my measurements matched up good between the Pitman arm and the knuckle over there. So what this is going to do is solely adjusting your steering. So what I did was make sure my steering wheel was centered. So I done that by doing the revolutions to full lock to the right and then counting back. And then I done it again for reassurance. And then got it in the center, which mine ended up probably about, it was a little over like 2 3/4. So I put it at about 1 1/2, a little over. My steering wheel's got a little play in it, but that lined that up. I put the seatbelt in to hold it there. And then I went over, and without turning any of that tie rod or anything, I hooked up my steering. I hooked it up to this control arm, or spindle, sorry. Then I measured squareness off the back from that sway bar to the back of the rotor. So I'm at 10 inches there. Then I found, when hooked up, I've got this side cranked too far in, which you can see. And it's way in. As you can tell, it's at like 9 1/2. So, I need to crank this guy, take this one off, crank it out some, and I'll get 10 this way. And then I'll be able to put my string, do measurement, and get it even closer. But that tells me the Pitman arm and everything I got there is locked in fine. So what I'll do is get this lined up, singe all that down, but not quite torque it yet, and run the wheel again at full lock, take a measurement to the left side, and I'm using that as my basis. All right, guys, got it running here. I'll show you where. So I got it full lock right now, and still taking off where my same measurement off of this. Come straight out the best I can. You're looking about 12 3/4 on that. That's at full lock this way. So what I do to make sure that I got this measurement the same, I'll take that at full lock. And I can get closer to this one. $12 3/4, so it's identically the same. Now, whether that is actually aligned with the back, I'll have to run that string to tell. But that is, show you here, that's back lined up straight with what play I've got in my wheel from the box. So you see we're lined up. So now we'll go ahead, put that, it was 55 and 55 foot-pounds of torque. we'll go ahead and get all this tightened down, get the cotter trees in, and get these wheels back in. We'll take it for a drive. Alright guys, so that's going to be everything on this one. If you have any questions, comments, drop them down below. I always try to get to them. We'll throw this tire on, get this thing back on the road, take it for a drive. But until next time, hit that subscribe button and go follow me on Instagram at MustangJackson67 so we can make this channel even better. But until next time, let's keep building.